In the misty dawn of October 1774, a fateful decision would forever alter the course of American frontier history. As two armies converged in the Ohio Valley, neither realized they were marching toward one of the bloodiest encounters between Native Americans and colonial forces. What unfolded at Point Pleasant was more than just a battle. It was a clash of civilizations, a testament to tactical brilliance, and a tragedy that would echo through generations. Journey with us as we uncover the untold story of Chief Cornstalk's daring gambit and the price paid in blood and courage on both sides. Like, follow, and subscribe to learn more about pivotal moments that shaped our history. In the autumn of 1774, amid the growing tensions between colonial settlers and Native American tribes, the Shawnee Nation demonstrated remarkable military intelligence capabilities that would shape the course of a crucial battle. Their head scouts, masters of woodland stealth and tactical observation, meticulously tracked two advancing colonial armies with precision that would have impressed even the most seasoned European military strategists. Through an intricate network of surveillance, these scouts provided Chief Cornstalk with detailed intelligence about troop movements, supply lines, and tactical positions of both colonial forces. Faced with the strategic disadvantage of two advancing armies, Chief Cornstalk made a decisive tactical decision that would alter the course of the conflict. Rather than allowing the colonial forces to combine their strength, he opted for a bold, preemptive strike against the Southern Army. On the night of October 9th, under the cover of darkness, approximately 500 Shawnee warriors executed a carefully planned river crossing. The operation, conducted in near-perfect silence, saw these skilled warriors navigating the cold waters of the Ohio River above the Kanawha. Each warrior carried their weapons and ammunition wrapped in animal hides to keep them dry, demonstrating the Shawnees' advanced understanding of warfare logistics. The crisp morning air of October 10th brought an unexpected turn of events. As dawn broke over the frontier landscape, a small group of colonial militiamen, their supplies running low, ventured from their encampment in search of game to supplement their dwindling meat rations. Their hunting expedition led them approximately 2 miles from Point Pleasant, where they encountered an extraordinary sight. Shawnee warriors strategically positioned across a 5-acre field. The encounter proved fatal for one unfortunate soldier, whose life was claimed by precise Shawnee marksmanship. His companions, however, managed to retreat through the morning mist, their desperate flight back to camp, carrying urgent warnings of the impending threat. Colonel Lewis's response to this intelligence was swift, but arguably underestimated the situation. He dispatched 2 equal contingents, each comprising 150 men, operating under the assumption they faced merely a large reconnaissance force rather than a full-scale assault force. This miscalculation would soon become apparent. Chief Cornstalk, despite the loss of tactical surprise, demonstrated remarkable strategic adaptability. Rather than retreating in the face of compromised plans, he made the bold decision to press forward with the attack. This decision initiated what would become known as the Battle of Point Pleasant, a confrontation that would prove to be one of the most significant engagements of the period. Characterized by intense combat and devastating casualties on both sides, the ensuing conflict would mark not just a military engagement, but a crucial turning point in the relationship between colonial powers and Native American nations in the Ohio Valley region. The roots of the Battle of Point Pleasant trace back to the systematic westward expansion that characterized British colonial ambitions throughout the 1700s. This century-long period of territorial advancement was marked not by peaceful settlement, but by a relentless series of conflicts that would fundamentally reshape the American frontier. The British colonizers' persistent push into native territories created a pattern of displacement that would have far-reaching consequences for both settlers and indigenous peoples. A pivotal moment in this territorial expansion came with the Treaty of Fort Stanwix in 1768, a document that would prove both controversial and consequential. This treaty, negotiated exclusively between British colonial officials and the Iroquois Confederacy, unilaterally extended colonial boundaries westward into territories that would later become West Virginia and Kentucky. Notably absent from these negotiations were the Shawnee people, whose ancestral claims to these lands were effectively ignored in the diplomatic process. The treaty's terms, drawn without consultation of all affected parties, laid the groundwork for future conflicts. The Ohio Valley, a region of extraordinary natural wealth, stood at the center of this territorial dispute. Its fertile soil, abundant game, and strategic waterways had sustained Native American communities for generations. The Shawnee, along with other indigenous nations, had developed sophisticated systems of shared land use, rotating hunting grounds, and established territorial boundaries. These traditional land use patterns, developed over centuries, now faced unprecedented disruption from colonial expansion. The economic motivations driving this westward push were complex and deeply rooted in colonial power structures. Among those seeking to profit from Western expansion were prominent colonial figures, including George Washington himself. These influential Virginians viewed the frontier not primarily as living space, but as a valuable commodity in land speculation ventures. Their financial interests often superseded considerations of Native American rights or existing land use patterns. This economic imperative, combined with increasing colonial population pressure, created an inexorable push westward that would inevitably lead to conflict. The situation was further complicated by the British colonial government's inconsistent policies regarding Western settlement. While official proclamations sometimes attempted to limit frontier expansion, the reality on the ground often reflected a different priority. Settlers, driven by the promise of new opportunities and supported by powerful colonial interests, continued to encroach upon Native American territories. This persistent advancement into indigenous lands created a cycle of resistance, retaliation, and escalating tensions that would ultimately culminate in open warfare. Throughout early 1774, the mounting tensions between settlers and Native Americans manifested in a series of increasingly violent confrontations. The Shawnee and Mingo tribes, faced with the systematic erosion of their territorial rights, engaged in defensive actions against frontier settlements. These encounters, ranging from isolated skirmishes to organized raids, created an atmosphere of constant tension and bloodshed that would persist through spring and summer, claiming lives on both sides of the conflict. In response to these escalating hostilities, Virginia Governor Lord Dunmore implemented a decisive military strategy aimed at asserting colonial control over the disputed territories. His plan involved a two-pronged military campaign specifically targeting Shawnee settlements north of the Ohio River. The operation's scale was substantial. Two separate armies, totaling 2,700 men, would converge from different directions to maximize their tactical advantage. The first force, under Colonel Andrew Lewis's command, consisted of 1,000 militiamen who departed from Camp Union, located in what is now Lewisburg, West Virginia. Simultaneously, Lord Dunmore personally led a larger force of 1,700 men, advancing southward from Fort Pitt. Lewis's contingent reached their designated position at Point Pleasant, situated strategically at the confluence of the Kanawha and Ohio rivers, on October 6th. Unknown to the colonial forces, their every movement was being meticulously monitored by Shawnee scouts, who maintained constant surveillance of both advancing armies, providing their leadership with precise intelligence about the colonials' positions and strength. Faced with the imminent convergence of two superior colonial forces, Chief Cornstalk made a calculated decision that would prove pivotal in the unfolding conflict. Rather than allowing the colonial armies to combine their strength, he opted for a preemptive strike against Colonel Lewis's southern force. Under the cover of darkness on October 9th, approximately 500 Shawnee warriors executed a precision river crossing, navigating the cold waters of the Ohio River above the Kanawha confluence. Their movement was conducted with remarkable stealth, each warrior carrying weapons and supplies secured against the water, as they positioned themselves for a dawn assault on the unsuspecting colonial camp. The early morning of October 10th brought an unexpected encounter that would alter the course of events. As dawn broke over the frontier landscape, several colonial militiamen, seeking to supplement their dwindling provisions, ventured from their encampment in search of game. Their routine hunting expedition led them approximately 2 miles from Point Pleasant, where they made a startling discovery. Shawnee warriors strategically deployed across a 5-acre field. The encounter proved immediately fatal for one of the Colonial soldiers, who fell to precise Shawnee fire. His companions, however, managed to retreat through the morning mist, carrying urgent warnings back to the main camp. Colonel Lewis's immediate response revealed a critical underestimation of the situation. He dispatched 2 equal contingents, each comprising 150 men, operating under the assumption that they faced merely a large reconnaissance force rather than a full-scale assault unit. This tactical miscalculation would soon become apparent as events unfolded. Chief Cornstalk, despite the compromised element of surprise, demonstrated remarkable tactical adaptability. Rather than withdrawing in the face of discovered plans, he made a bold strategic decision to press forward with the attack. His assessment was grounded in sound military logic. The Colonial militia was now divided, and his warriors, though fewer in total number than Lewis's entire force, held a temporary numerical advantage over the dispatched contingents. This decision would initiate what became known as the Battle of Point Pleasant, a confrontation that would prove to be one of the most significant and bloody engagements of the period. The battle that followed would test the limits of both forces' military capabilities and human endurance, marking a crucial turning point in the struggle for control of the Ohio Valley. At precisely 6:30 a.m., as the Colonial militia advanced approximately half a mile from their camp, they encountered the full force of the Shawnees' tactical expertise. The native warriors, having carefully prepared their positions, launched a devastating ambush against the advancing columns. The front ranks of the militia bore the brunt of the initial assault, suffering significant casualties in the opening moments of the engagement. The eastern column, stunned by the ferocity and precision of the Shawnee attack, began to falter and retreat under intense pressure. This tactical success allowed the Shawnee warriors to redirect their concentrated firepower against the western militia column, creating a potentially catastrophic situation for the Colonial forces. The gravity of the situation became apparent to Colonel Lewis after approximately 30 minutes of continuous gunfire. The steady stream of wounded soldiers returning to the main camp provided stark evidence that his forces were engaged in a major battle, far exceeding his initial assessment of the situation. The tactical surprise achieved by Chief Cornstalk had effectively nullified Lewis's original strategic planning. Recognizing the critical nature of the situation, Lewis made an urgent decision to commit additional forces to the engagement. The arrival of 200 Colonial reinforcements proved crucial in stabilizing the deteriorating situation. These fresh troops enabled the militia to establish a more coherent defensive position, forming a continuous line that extended strategically between 2 natural barriers, the Ohio River on their left flank and the Kanawha River on their right. This defensive formation was further strengthened as individual soldiers from the main encampment gradually made their way to the front, filling crucial gaps in the line. This impromptu reinforcement system helped transform what had begun as a chaotic retreat into a more organized and sustainable defensive position. The battle evolved into a series of intense personal encounters as both Shawnee warriors and Colonial militia sought whatever natural cover the terrain provided, rocks, trees, and fallen logs becoming impromptu fortifications in the desperate struggle for survival. The combination of heavy morning fog and the dense smoke from continuous gunfire created a nightmarish battlefield environment where visibility was severely limited. In these conditions, the fighting inevitably devolved into close-quarter combat, with the Shawnee warriors pressing forward to engage at extremely close range, leading to brutal hand-to-hand confrontations. The ferocity of the combat forced both sides to adapt their tactics, with firearms becoming makeshift clubs when ammunition was spent or when enemies drew too close for effective shooting. The battlefield resonated with the sounds of tomahawks striking musket stocks, the clash of knives, and the impact of hand-to-hand combat. Above the din of battle, Chief Cornstalk's commanding presence was unmistakable. His imposing figure stood out among his warriors as he moved along the battle line, his voice carrying across the chaos with repeated calls of, "Be strong, be strong." Despite his visibility making him an obvious target, Colonial marksmen repeatedly failed to bring down the Shawnee leader. The battle's intensity remained undiminished as hours passed, with each side launching alternating offensive pushes that gained and lost ground in a deadly ebb and flow. Shawnee warriors added psychological warfare to their tactical arsenal, their voices raised in mockery of the colonial militia's musical signals. The geographical constraints of the battlefield, with rivers flanking both sides, prevented the Shawnee from employing their preferred tactical maneuver of flanking and rear attacks, forcing them to engage in direct frontal assaults. This tactical limitation led to an unexpected display of traditional warrior bravery, as the Shawnee chiefs, Red Hawk, Blue Jacket, Black Hoof, Cornstalk, and his son, personally led frontal charges against the colonial positions. The terrain itself played a crucial role in the battle's development, with the river bottomland's natural features of driftwood and rock outcroppings providing critical cover for both sides. A significant turning point occurred around 1 p.m. when colonial forces successfully captured a strategic ridgeline fortified with natural obstacles, providing them with superior defensive positions. This tactical advantage forced the Shawnee to gradually withdraw to a secondary ridge position extending from the Ohio River to a swampy area, resulting in a noticeable reduction in the battle's intensity as both sides reassessed their positions and conserved ammunition. As atmospheric conditions improved with the dissipating ground fog, the technological advantage of the colonial forces became increasingly apparent. The militia's long rifles, with their superior range and accuracy, allowed them to engage the Shawnee warriors with deadly precision from distances that rendered Native American weapons less effective. The intense close-quarter combat that had dominated the morning's engagement gradually gave way to a more methodical exchange of long-range fire, as both sides adapted to growing combat fatigue and tactical realities. In this critical moment, Chief Cornstalk made a strategic decision that defied conventional Native American warfare tactics. Despite being significantly outnumbered, he chose to maintain his position and continue the engagement, fully aware that this decision would likely result in substantial casualties among his warriors. His reasoning was rooted in strategic necessity. Allowing the colonial forces under Lewis to unite with Dunmore's larger army would create an overwhelming force that would render any future resistance futile. This calculated risk demonstrated Cornstalk's understanding of the broader military situation facing his people. As the afternoon battle reached its decisive phase, Colonel Andrew Lewis implemented a bold tactical maneuver designed to break the stalemate. His plan involved a complex flanking operation utilizing 3 companies of colonial militia. The execution of this maneuver required careful coordination and stealth. The selected units quietly withdrew from the main battle line and began a circuitous route along the Kanawha River, using the natural cover provided by the riverbank to shield their movement from Shawnee observers. The flanking forces' progress brought them to Crooked Creek, where they executed the final phase of their operation. Emerging from the stream bed, the colonial troops found themselves positioned on elevated ground that offered a tactical advantage. They now occupied a ridge overlooking the Shawnee's left rear flank. From this superior position, they initiated a devastating surprise attack, opening fire on the unsuspecting warriors below. This maneuver would prove to be the tactical turning point of the entire engagement. The unexpected flanking assault created immediate tactical confusion among the Shawnee warriors. Chief Cornstalk, whose intelligence network had already reported the approach of a second colonial column toward Point Pleasant, faced a critical moment of uncertainty. The sudden appearance of Lewis's flanking force was initially misidentified as the anticipated arrival of this second column, compelling Cornstalk to initiate a strategic withdrawal of his forces. Demonstrating remarkable leadership under pressure, Cornstalk executed a carefully orchestrated retreat. He personally selected his most experienced warriors to form a rear guard, tasking them with maintaining defensive positions to protect the evacuation of their wounded comrades across the Ohio River. Among the seriously wounded was Silverheels, Cornstalk's own brother, whose rescue illustrated the deep familial bonds within the Shawnee leadership. In a poignant demonstration of familial devotion, their sister Non-Helema personally ensured Silverheel's safe transport across the river. The Shawnee showed equal respect for their fallen, committing the bodies of their dead warriors to the Ohio River's waters, before executing a skillful withdrawal into the protective cover of the forest beyond the river. The aftermath of the battle revealed the devastating human cost on both sides. Lord Dunmore's midnight arrival at the Colonial camp revealed a scene of profound suffering and chaos. The medical situation was particularly dire, with wounded soldiers receiving only the most basic care due to severely limited medical resources. The officer corps had been especially hard hit, with numerous leaders among the dead and wounded. The statistical toll of the battle was equally sobering. Colonel Lewis's victory came at an enormous price. 75 of his men lay dead, with another 140 suffering wounds of varying severity. These casualties represented nearly 25% of his entire force, a staggering loss rate that would impact the unit's operational capabilities. While precise Shawnee casualties were harder to verify due to their practiced tradition of removing their dead and wounded from the battlefield, contemporary estimates suggest approximately 50 warriors were lost. Among these fallen was Puxinois, whose death would carry historical significance as the father of the future Shawnee leader, Tecumseh. 7 days after the bloody engagement at Point Pleasant, Colonel Lewis's forces, having tended to their wounded and replenished their supplies, initiated a northward advance across the Ohio River. Their destination was Camp Charlotte, a fortified position established near the primary Shawnee settlements along the Scioto River, where Lord Dunmore awaited their arrival with his forces. Despite Chief Cornstalk's demonstrated tactical prowess and personal inclination to continue resistance, the other Shawnee chiefs, confronted with the overwhelming prospect of facing the now united colonial armies, opted for diplomatic resolution. The resulting Treaty of Camp Charlotte, signed in late October 1774, represented a significant shift in the region's power dynamics. Under its terms, Chief Cornstalk agreed to two major concessions: the release of all colonial prisoners held by various tribal groups, and the cessation of both hunting activities south of the Ohio River and attacks on river traffic. These terms effectively limited Shawnee influence in territories they had long considered their own. Lord Dunmore, representing colonial interests, reciprocated with commitments designed to establish clear territorial boundaries. Kentucky would be closed to further white settlement, and colonial citizens would be prohibited from establishing settlements north of the Ohio River. However, the pragmatic attitudes of both sides were evident in the general acknowledgement that these arrangements were likely temporary. With the treaty's conclusion, the Virginia militia forces began their journey home, while the Native American participants returned to their respective villages, both sides harboring doubts about the durability of this negotiated peace. In the aftermath of Point Pleasant, the fragile peace secured by the Treaty of Camp Charlotte would prove as transient as the morning mist over the Ohio River. The echoes of this pivotal battle would resonate through generations, shaping the destiny of both Native Americans and settlers in ways none could have foreseen. The courage of Chief Cornstalk, the strategic brilliance of colonial leaders, and the sacrifices of countless warriors and soldiers would be remembered as defining moments in American frontier history. Follow our channel for more untold stories of courage, conflict, and the complex tapestry of our shared past.